I think too many people do not understand what's going on with Donald Trump and his relationship, his infatuation with the Insurrection Act. Friendly Honey Badger and I were chatting about this earlier today because we both see eye to eye on this issue. Basically, since day one of this term, Donald Trump has been talking about invoking the Insurrection Act, making you think he's on the cusp of invoking it. Any moment, he could just bam, drop it, and then it's insurrection time, baby, right? People have been conflating Insurrection Act with martial law. Martial law is not actually a thing that the president can do, but people use them synonymously, okay? So for the sake of this video, let's pretend that they are synonymous, right? Most of the time, people make their crash out videos being terrified that Donald Trump is going to invoke martial law. They're really talking about him invoking the Insurrection Act, and they use those terms pretty interchangeably. But again, they're not actually the same thing. And man, he's really blustered about it from the get-go. And every time we've seen him position troops in cities where he's tried really hard to crack down. He wants the people to be afraid of the Insurrection Act. The mere presence of the military. One, he's trying to normalize having the military wherever he wants. Why do you think he dresses up immigration and customs enforcement agents as if they were military, as if they were like American Marines in Iraq and Afghanistan? That's how he's dressing these fail son chuddies up to send them to Minneapolis. He wants to normalize a military-like presence. He's always been obsessed with using the military against the American people. He's always been obsessed with using the military in a violent way against the American people. After all, during his first term, during the 2020 protests, during the Black Lives Matter protests, he asked his advisors if the military could just shoot protesters in the legs.
What specifically was he suggesting that the U.S. military should do to these protesters?
He says, can't you just shoot them? Just shoot them in the legs or something. And he's suggesting that that's what we should do, that we should bring in the troops and shoot the protesters.
The commander-in-chief was suggesting that the U.S. military shoot protesters.
Yes, in the streets of our nation's capital. That's right.
To which his advisors at the time were like, no, we're not going to shoot American citizens in the legs because you don't like them exercising their federally protected First Amendment right. But this time around, y'all, he's got Kristi Noem and he's got Greg SS in the U.S. Bavino, right? He's got craven, sociopathic, the kind of people who shoot their own dogs, the kind of people who enjoy this kind of violence and have no regard for the law whatsoever. There's no scruples. There's no line that they won't cross in the name of their craven ambition and supporting Donald Trump in order to achieve their fascist goals, right? So now the guardrails are off. There's nobody checking him. And then you end up with nurses being shot in the streets, moms being shot in the head in broad daylight in American cities for doing nothing. Good time to remind everybody that we're in this position now because Republicans in Congress have failed to constrain Donald Trump at any point in time. So during his first term, more folks were willing to check him and his desire to use the military to wage war against Americans. And this time around, not only are there no guardrails in terms of advisors and people in his government, but also he's far more demented and thus far more disinhibited. You are seeing more of the kind of pure malignant narcissism with no ability to constrain his own impulsivity and like horrible desires. But we're still not getting the Insurrection Act invoked. And I've seen so many people over the last couple of weeks being like, he is going to call for the Insurrection Act to be invoked. It's going to happen. It will happen. He definitely is going to invoke the Insurrection Act. First of all, always beware somebody who tells you that they can predict the future and they know what's going to happen next, because we don't know. But he has yet to do that. And here's the thing, y'all. Okay, a couple things. Hang in there with me here. One, every time the people push back, rise up, resist in really big, demonstrable ways, or we announce that we have plans to, hands off, no kings, protests in LA against ICE, protests in Portland against ICE coming in and Donald Trump threatening to bring in the National Guard, protests in Chicago, always this threat of the Insurrection Act every time the people rise up. But he never calls for it. He never calls for it. And likewise, this is why I say you should really, really be suspicious, especially of comments that you see online. The bots are out in full force. When the people have these groundswell moments where we are taking bigger actions, where we are advancing the movement in really, really obvious ways, Suddenly you see people on, oh no, don't do that. Don't have a national day of protest. Don't have the biggest day of protest in American history. Don't go out in the streets and resist what's going on. Don't protest against Donald Trump trying to bring the National Guard into your state. Don't do any of that because he'll invoke the Insurrection Act. Weird how all those bots kind of say the same thing. Isn't it weird how at every moment when you see the American people taking bigger risks, organizing more effectively, stepping out and engaging in bigger actions, suddenly it's like, oh, the Insurrection Act, it's coming. It's all over the comments. If you do that, won't he just call for martial law? If you do that, won't he just invoke the Insurrection Act? Why is it that chorus of bots always comes out at the same time saying the same old thing month after month after month? Why is it doomer creators get on social media and leave post after post, make video after video when we engage in these bigger actions, or when Trump gets a little bit pissed off at something? It's going to happen any day now. The insurrection is going to happen. He's going to call for the Insurrection Act. It's about to happen, everybody. It's just moments away. Oh my gosh. And then it never happens. But gosh, it sure scares the fuck out of people. It sure scares people an awful lot. Oh, thanks, babe. Okay. Love you. Good night. So this is my theory. One, obviously, we know what the bots are doing by now, right? We understand how they're trying to demoralize us and scare us and get us to stop taking these bigger actions because we're so afraid of the Insurrection Act being called for. The threat of the Insurrection Act is enough to get an awful lot of people paralyzed, staying at home. Or it has been up until now. The threat of the Insurrection Act has been enough to chill dissent for a lot of people. I saw somebody in my comments yesterday say, hey guys, after what happened to Alex Preddy, if you go to a protest, don't take your side piece. If you go to a protest, don't carry right now because you might get murdered for it. Hey, so that's you functionally complying in advance. That's you functionally ceding your 2A constitutional rights because of the threat of you being hurt or killed for exercising them. The killing of Alex Preddy worked on whoever that commenter was. It chilled their dissent enough for them to advocate for other people to no longer exercise their 2A constitutional rights. And it's the same thing with the Insurrection Act. The threat of it, the fear that even mentioning it invokes is enough for some people to lay down and comply. If the threat in and of itself is enough to freak you out or back down, then he never has to call for the Insurrection Act. The looming threat becomes more powerful than the actual thing, because if Donald Trump called for the Insurrection Act, you would find out that it's not just Constitution go boom. It's not just Donald Trump can just throw the Constitution in a paper shredder and declare himself a monarch. That's not what the Insurrection Act does. It has very narrow parameters for what it allows him to do. Use federal troops to enforce state and federal law. So far, for Stephen Miller and Donald Trump, the threat of invoking martial law has been more powerful than actually pulling the trigger on it. Functionally, the Insurrection Act has now become a boogeyman. It's the monster under your bed so that you're too scared to get up and go pee in the middle of the night. And see, for me, I've watched him over the last year. I've watched his team over the last year. And I know he sounds like he's salivating, he's itching to call for the Insurrection Act. But unlike his tariffs and some of his other actions, I think the risk is too high. The risk of failure is too high for him to actually invoke it. And that's for two reasons. Number one, it creates a situation in which the military can lawfully, rightfully disobey his unlawful orders. He risks the military balking publicly, showing the entire world that the military will not back him in his authoritarian agenda, that they will not be willing to violate the Constitution and wage war on the American people. He cannot take that risk. And number two, there's the fact that invoking the Insurrection Act likely would create a massive backlash from the American people, especially in the wake of what we're seeing in Minnesota right now, where they thought they could just show up with their massive force of ICE agents, like the majority of ICE in the country, and then bring in Customs and Border Patrol on top of it, and that it would scare people in Minnesota into submission. And instead, it had the opposite effect. And that has been politically catastrophic for Donald Trump. What happened in Minnesota is a disaster for him and Stephen Miller, a disaster. That's why they pulled Greg Bovino, demoted him. That's why Kristi Noem is being pulled back. He cannot expend the political capital to call for the Insurrection Act and have it go as bad or worse than this disaster in Minnesota has been for him. The risk of the backlash is just far too great. It's far too great. So I just want to remind you all, please be courageous in this moment. Authoritarians thrive on threats. And if the threat is enough, then they already own you. We have to be courageous in this moment because there's no fucking way Donald Trump is owning us, and he's definitely not owning the future of this country.